Welcome to Elder of Zion TV. I'm Elder.
Mrs. Elder.
And today we're going to talk about what everybody's been talking about, Donald Trump's picks for his major advisors and cabinet posts that we know about so far.
Hey, that sounds exciting. Let's go ahead and find out about it.
Let's find out about it. It does sound exciting. It's been really unbelievable because if you just read the regular media, you're convinced that everybody, as soon as somebody's announced, the first tweets that come out and the first headlines that come out is this person is a racist.
Well, of course they're a racist because what do you say first? They're a racist.
Of course, because it's from Donald Trump. So everybody makes the assumption that they're racist. It is so the question is, listen, I'm not a Donald Trump fan. I'm not an anti-Donald Trump person for the most part. I am, I wasn't for Hillary, I wasn't for Trump, but I do like to look at everything as objectively as possible. I want to see what the truth is, and the media has failed completely in pretty much every case of all of the people that I've investigated. This is a little bit off topic for me. Obviously, I am interested, obviously, if somebody's accused of being an anti-Semite or being anti-Israel or being, ridiculously whatever. Listen, I care.
I just think that it goes to show the media bias, and I think that that's something that needs to be addressed.
And that's pretty much what we're talking about over here. So a lot of this is the media bias, and we were going to talk about that. But
don't take this wrong. Trump was saying it the whole time.
That's true. He definitely was.
And he's right.
In many cases, he's right, but he himself is also trying to manipulate the media too. So it's not nobody's completely blameless over here. But
nobody's ever completely blameless, but come on, the media, hello.
Well, it's true, but let's talk about it a little bit. And the number one person who is who's been the lightning rod for all of the stuff that people are talking about is Steve Bannon. There's no shortage of headlines that talk about, and initially, just without even anything, they're saying that, sorry, this is not right, but they're saying that Bannon is a racist. This is one of the more minor
so
ones
what do you think?
From the Washington Post. So that's and since he is really the top advisor, along with the other person from the RNC, whose name I don't know how to pronounce, so I'm not going to mention it. But it's
Oh, that's really good. You can't pronounce his name, so you don't mention it.
right. But it doesn't matter.
On.
No, nobody really has a problem with him because he's but nevertheless, Bannon immediately was a lightning rod. So the question is Bannon really a racist? And
why don't you tell us? What do you think? Do you think he's a racist?
I think it's actually more questions than that we have to talk about. The questions we have to talk about are a lot of questions. There were accusations that he was an anti-Semite.
I see that. You put
Yes,
it on the screen.
I know. Okay.
Is Bannon an anti-Semite?
Okay. Is he a racist? Is Breitbart anti-Semitic? Because there's a whole bunch of different questions that come up over here, and the media is conflating all of them. So I'm going to try to go. I'm not going to go through details with every one of them, but I will go through what I've seen. At least my impressions for all of these answers. The first question is Bannon an anti-Semite? He clearly isn't. That's not even it's not even close.
Why do you think they even drove the idea that he's an anti-Semite?
The reason they said it is because he had a divorce. He was divorced from his wife. He was in the middle of a divorce battle, and the wife says at one point he didn't want to send his daughter to a school because there were too many whiny Jews there and also too many Hanukkah books. That's what she said. This is, I don't remember how many years ago.
Oh,
so,
that's great.
Yeah.
While you're getting a divorce settlement,
right,
somebody who doesn't like that person,
exactly.
They're going to quote them. That's great.
So that was the worst thing that people were saying, that they're saying he's an anti-Semite. Immediately, and the accusation's going down because immediately the people that worked with him, including people that worked with him very closely at Breitbart, because obviously he was the head of Breitbart for a couple of years, including an Orthodox Jew named Joel Pollack, just came to his defense and says, "Listen, I worked with the guy. He let me get off for Shabbos, for Saturdays. He let me get off for Jewish holidays. He would wish me a good Shabbos. He would be as accommodating as possible. He was also very instrumental in bringing Breitbart to Jerusalem, opening up a bureau over there. He's as pro-Israel as it can be, but he worked with tons and tons of Jews at Breitbart. Nobody had any inkling of any sort that he is anything but philo-Semitic, that he has anything but liking Jews. So that seems to be, that accusation has clearly makes no sense.
Yeah, but the fact is that good, better, and different, you just don't know what goes on behind the scenes, and people can be very nice to you, but at least he's very nice to them in person. So that's a good thing.
Right. No, absolutely. But I don't think that there's any question that he is. And the same sort of thing with being a racist. It's he does not seem to be a racist. The question is, and again, I'm looking at interviews. I'm looking for, and nobody's really brought up anything that he said anything that was truly racist. Obviously,
Could you actually listen to the media? Come on,
Yeah,
give me
yeah.
a break. Anything that they would put out anyway.
But
Come on, give me a break.
It's but a lot of this stuff comes from is Breitbart was his newspaper, his online newspaper, was that anti-Semitic. The biggest evidence they brought for that was an article whose headline was not written by even Breitbart's normal staff. It was written by a different person who also happened to be a Jew, that was upset over the possibility of a third party running against a third party Republican, a third party conservative running against Trump. And so they called Bill Kristol, who was considering it, a renegade Jew. But that's, again, if you look at the Breitbart site, and I'm sorry I didn't cue it all up because it would take too long, there are tons of things that they're extraordinarily pro-Jewish and pro-Israel and anti-Semitism. There are tons of articles. All you have to do, and you can do it for yourself, go to Google, say, Google Jew, and then the word site : Breitbart.com, so that way you can see every time the word Jew shows up in a headline or in an article, and go for it. It's clearly not true. And the same thing with racist. Now certainly Breitbart will have had articles that are critical of the Black Lives Movement. There's certainly going to be articles that are critical of illegal immigration.
Yeah, but the thing is that those are things that should be brought to the surface. Come on, give me a break.
No, it's true, and 100%. And it's so, but nevertheless, there's a big difference between that and racism. And the left.
I agree with you, but the thing is that everybody's redefining everybody for racism in order to uplift their movement.
Yeah, well, yeah, in order to bring their own, they have to put somebody else down in order to make themselves look better.
Right.
So all of this obviously spilled over into, is Donald Trump an anti-Semite and is he racist?
Yeah, I know, but the thing is that every single thing that I've heard, they're always spilling over. And the fact is that I don't think people realize that America is lucky to have somebody such as Donald Trump. Sorry, I'm saying this, but I got to tell you something. I think he's going to make a change.
A change for sure he's going to make.
I agree, but I was going to say to you, there could have been some ugly changes coming if it wasn't for him.
Again, that's not.
And I
what
understand
we're
everybody's going
talking
to
about
go one way and the other, but I got to tell you something that I actually think it's going to pull together. But go ahead.
We'll see.
Tell us what you think.
Okay, but so here the fundamental question is: Bannon himself is he considers Breitbart to be like the major organ of what's called the alt-right. And again, nobody really, as far as I could tell, for most of the interviews, that's not quite 100% true, but most of these original articles that were all calling him a racist, very few of them actually looked at what his words were. And
actually, Fox News did.
Fox News did to some extent.
No, but the thing is that they're defending him.
They are defending. Yeah, but it's like they defend him, but they're also like biased. Now, Fox News is just as biased as everybody else is. So let's just look at his actual words are. What I have up here, BuzzFeed, again, you never would expect to see real news from BuzzFeed, but BuzzFeed actually found the transcript of a speech that he gave and some questions and answers afterwards from 2014. And somebody asked him the question, and so it's on the screen. You referenced the Front National and UKIP as having elements that are tinged with racial stuff. And he said, what do you say about this, the racism of the people that in the movements that you support so much? And his answer was, and this is in 2014, he says, I'm not an expert in this, but it seems they've had some aspects of that may be anti-Semitic or racial, he said. By the way, even in the Tea Party, we had a broad movement like this. We've been criticized. They tried to make the Tea Party as being racist, which it's not. There are always elements who turn up at these things, whether it's the militia guys or whatever. Some are fringe organizations. My point is that over time, it all gets kind of washed out, right? People understand what pulls them together, and the people on the margins, I think, get marginalized more and more. So his way of looking at it is that, yeah, there are some racists that attach themselves to these movements, these nationalist movements, and he calls himself a nationalist explicitly. He says, I'm certainly not a white nationalist, because he says that the arguments that he makes applies just as much to working class blacks and Hispanics and everybody else. But he says that there's, but there are elements that are anti-Semitic and racist that do attach themselves, and he's not really he's saying he doesn't over here in this interview. He doesn't even say anything against it. He just says he's implying that he's against it, but he just says it happens. But as the movements grow, they're going to turn more center. They're going to wash those things out.
And one would hope so.
One would hope so. There's a Hollywood Reporter, and again, you don't expect the best interviews for somebody to be from the Hollywood Reporter. But Hollywood
The
Reporter.
fact that you're looking at it right now kind of blows my mind.
But
I don't think I've ever seen you research to that level.
But this is well, I definitely do. But Hollywood
I
Reporter.
meant to go to the Hollywood Reporter is what I'm talking about.
Nevertheless, it's it was also a very, very interesting article, and he explains himself. And again, he's a very bright guy. He's not just a bright guy. He's an extremely, extremely smart person. He has his very specific views, and he has a very specific philosophy. And in some ways, I think that when Trump doesn't seem to have a philosophy when he joined the race, and it looks to me like Bannon has really created the philosophy behind the entire campaign. He's unbelievably powerful.
The fact is that you're not 100% sure, but it sure looks that way. Is that what you're saying?
It certainly looks that way. There's a lot of the philosophical stuff that we hear from Trump.
I gotta tell you, like I said, it's kind of hard to believe, but I hear you.
But Bannon's been talking about the same sort of stuff for years.
But it doesn't mean that Trump couldn't think the same way.
Oh no, of course, no, certainly.
I wouldn't totally give all the credit.
I'm not giving him all the credit, but I'll play a video. I'll play an audio later. That's very interesting. But this is also a very good article. Talking about, and he also was just, they were asking the same sort of questions. The Wall Street Journal actually managed to talk to him as well. And he says, and here he was a little bit more explicit because this interview just happened a couple days ago. He said that he said that the alt-right has a tiny, he says the alt-right has some racial and anti-Semitic overtones, and he says he makes it clear that he has zero tolerance for such views. It's hard for me to accept that completely, that he has zero tolerance for such views, because, listen, you look at the comment section on Breitbart, you look at the stuff that came up on Twitter and the anti-Semitism that came up. It is, there's stuff that's out there that even though there might be some very general statements when somebody asks explicitly to Trump or to over here to Bannon that, hey, what do you say about that? So they say, oh, of course we're against it. But there's, it's not like as convincing as I would like. It's not like as clear cut in saying, hey, we are absolutely against it. We do not want to be associated with this stuff.
Isn't that politics, though?
It is politics. You're right.
Because what I was going to say to you is that if somebody comes out so hardline, the fact of the matter is that they're not able to get people together. I'm sorry.
No, you have a point. And I want to get back to that point. However, I just want to play, if I can find it right now. Maybe I lost it. I hope not.
You're going to go ahead and, what is it? It's a voice of
I have an
him
audio
speaking at...
Yeah, I have an audio of Bannon, and I think I lost it. I apologize.
Oh, don't lose it. Oh,
Yeah,
come
yeah.
on. Go find it. What is this?
I have... Oh, man, this is bad. It's going to take me too long. No, there's an audio of Bannon from a... oh, no, I don't think I have it.
You really don't?
No, I don't have it. There's an audio of Bannon from a radio show, or like an online radio show from 2010, in which he said very specifically that he wants to take over the Republican Party, that he wants his movement to take over the entire Republican Party.
Why did he want to take over the Republican
He's against the Republican Party as much as he's against
But he thought that
the
it
left.
needed to be realigned?
Not just realigned. In other words, essentially, he feels that the Republican Party has become too much for Wall Street, too much for the rich people on Wall Street, too much against the working American people who have been the backbone of what Trump was going after.
Well, the killer is that that's what Mitt Romney was standing for.
But
And
it's
what he's saying is that he wanted it to move to the left a little bit?
not to the left. It's not left or right. In fact, he thinks he's more right. What he's saying is that, for example, when Wall Street, when they would bail out,
that's ridiculous.
the major things, who pays for those bailouts?
We do.
Right. So the middle class is what pays for it. So
Absolutely.
So he's very, very upset. He's saying, that's not the way it should be. So he thinks that he wants to make it into a populist conservative movement. So that's his major thing.
Yeah, but that's
and what the
exactly-
Tea Party was about, and that's what the alt-right movement officially is supposed to be about. So that's where he's coming from.
But what he did is that he, in essence, took a structure that was in place and reformatted it in order to make it something that's useful.
But that's what he said. But in the interview that I couldn't find just now, he said, we have to start from the bottom up. We have to go state house to state house, school district to school district, and bring up, this Tea Party type Republican Party from scratch. When Trump started running, he saw an opportunity.
And he
and
latched
he,
on
and he
there.
grabbed it. He definitely grabbed it. So there's
Hey, listen, you got to hand that to somebody who's going to grab every single opportunity. They're going to make it big.
no, but it's also and listen, and he is now an extraordinarily powerful person in the country, and he doesn't really care what people think about him. And so there's nothing wrong with people examining what he has to say, because he's right now an extremely important person, and he's one of the top people in the United States that's setting the direction. So there's nothing wrong with examining what he has to say. What's wrong is people and the media just automatically coming and saying that, oh, there's he's very, that he's completely off the wall and he's racist and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, but the fact still remains the same, is that the news media, I got to tell you something, they need to be rebuilt themselves. So
Well,
what
they
can
do.
I tell you?
So, but what I do want to say, I mean, and again, in my opinion, both for
Except for
Bannon,
our show.
right? Exactly. What I do want to say though, as far as Trump and Bannon, my last question over here that I ask is that, and because I want to hold them to the same standard that I hold the left and that I hold the media. The media and the human rights groups, so-called human rights groups, and the NGOs and everything like that have been utterly silent about left-wing anti-Semitism, with the slight exception of earlier this year, it happened to bubble up a little bit in England as far as the anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. So there was a little bit of talk about that, and there was a little bit of soul-searching in the left, a tiny bit. But besides that tiny example, Muslim anti-Semitism, leftist anti-Semitism, people that say that Israel doesn't have a right to exist, and the BDS movement and stuff like that has not been, it has not been called out as anti-Semitic from the left the way it should be. They've been accepting it way too much, and I don't want to give them that. I don't want to give them a pass for that, but I don't want to give Trump and Bannon a pass on doing the same thing on the right when there are anti-Semitic elements on their side.
Well, the fact remains the same, is that that's exactly probably why you're saying what you're saying right now. So you're going to be able to get the message across. Stop doing it.
Right. And I'm also where I disagree with Bannon, and there's a lot of stuff he says that's very smart, and some of the stuff I can't even claim to understand his entire philosophy, because he's he has a background of finance, background military. He has a lot of experience. But when he thinks that anti-Semitism on the right that's popped up, and it's been bad, the stuff's been bad. It's been really malicious stuff that you can see on Twitter against any Jew that was against Trump or anything like that. Really, really vicious. But for him to say that he thinks it's just going to shake out and that it's just going to disappear, I think that's a big mistake, because anti-Semitism...
So meaning that they need to actually get out there and say something and say, knock it off?
Right.
What do you suggest? Because what happens is that when you actually call something out, which is correct,
Mm-hmm.
the fact is that you need to give a solution.
No, the
to
solution is
potentially-
completely dissociate themselves from it. Don't just say, "Oh yeah, the Ku Klux Klan likes us." Wink, wink. They really are a tiny bit. They are tiny. You're right. They're not that important. However, you got to make clear. Listen, you have nothing to do with me. You have nothing to do with my philosophy. If you think that we are something on the same side as you, we'd rather not have your support. That's what I want to hear. I want to hear that from the left to talk to anti-Semites that way. I want to hear that from the right to talk to anti-Semites that way. Because if you
So you're
let
saying
it go,
it goes across the board.
it goes across the board.
Any
And
anti-Semitism, whether it's Jewish, blacks, whites, Indians, Arabs, you want it to be the same.
you're talking about racism, or you're talking about anti-Semitism?
Both.
It is both. The fact is, the both of them should have no tolerance for for Islamophobia, what they call Islamophobia.
Understood.
It's purely just hating Muslims for being Muslims and attacking Muslims and stuff like that. And then the crimes are going up against Muslims. Of course, that cannot be countenanced. Of course, that's not supposed to happen. That does not mean you cannot be against radical Islam.
So what are we going to do to stop this?
But all I'm saying for the purposes of this show is that there's you can't just throw it off, and just say, oh, it's not a big deal. And that you would certainly, and I think it's very short-sighted to say, oh, it's going to shake itself out as the movement gets bigger, which is what Bannon was saying. What you have to say is you have to dissociate yourself from it completely, because if you don't, it gets bigger. It's not that it's going to get smaller. It's not like it's going to get more and more marginalized. It
So
gets
you're going
bigger.
to say it's growing into a cancer and they need to put a halt to it. End
Exactly.
of story.
That's it. That's what.
And
that's
that's
all I'm
the
saying.
whole thing of the show, right?
Yeah, that's the main
Okay,
part.
Trump, listen to us. You
Okay,
got to
fine.
say something.
With what little time we have left, because I did not want to take too much time, but I want to go quickly over some of the other ones of Trump's picks.
Okay.
Is as much again, and just very briefly, I'm actually troubled by General Flynn. as a national security advisor.
Okay.
Here's the tweet that people are most upset about, in which he quotes, he brings out a video saying fear of Muslims is rational. If you look at the video, it's not a news video, it's not an objective video. It just says, hey, here's a list of all these terror attacks that are done by Muslims, therefore it implies that all Muslims are evil. It's just not
So
what
he didn't qualify it enough.
for him to tweet something like that is not something that you would expect for somebody that's high up in government.
Did he tweet it before or after?
It was beforehand.
How many
but
tweets did he
kept it
have
on.
like that, and how long ago did he do it?
This one was in February this year, but there's more articles that are very troubling. I can't say I've spent as much time researching him, but there's enough stuff that's very troubling about him to me that I'm like, that he was working for the Obama administration. He was doing, it turns out it looks like he was just incompetent at running his agency, and people were really complaining about him. So now I'm a little bit
have the
scary.
communication skills.
I don't know, but it's just, you have to hit the ground running on something like this. So him, I'm a little bit nervous about.
Okay.
But nevertheless, you're going to see these headlines. Trump embarrasses himself. There's the bias is crazy.
But the concern is
here-
there, and rightfully so.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
the question is it so he needs to become made aware of it? He needs to address it.
I'm sure he's aware of
no,
it. The
but
question
what I'm
is,
saying too, it needs to be addressed.
no, something needs to be addressed. There's James Mattis, who is considered a front runner for defense secretary. Certainly seems to be very qualified for the position. The things that, from an Israel perspective, that is troublesome is that he has a very standardized, left-wing view of Israel and the settlements, and he says that, if Israel keeps doing the settlements, it's going to be an apartheid state.
That's ridiculous, though. So the question is do you think it can be changed?
Well, again, he's the defense secretary doesn't have, he has some. I mean, there's something that has to be told about it. He has. Listen, it's a large staff that they're going to have. There are other people that are going to have other opinions, and you don't need everybody to have exactly the same opinion.
We should have done a call-in show. We could have taken the questions.
Oh, good.
We got to do that next time.
Maybe we have to tell people ahead of time. But nevertheless, it's this is a little bit. I mean, the stuff
would
he's
have
saying
loved
is
to hear
no
what people
different.
say
Yeah,
about
the
this.
stuff he's saying is no different than every presidential administration from both Republican and Democrat have said since Reagan. Nevertheless, it's troubling to see this. Excuse me, to see that he says stuff like this, and that he seems a little bit misinformed on a number of things. We could talk about that some other time. I'll hear some more about Flynn. That doesn't matter. Jeff Sessions for Attorney General.
Oh, I'm so happy. Oh no, it's not Jeff Sessions. I'm sorry, Mike.
We'll get to Mike Pompeo. Jeff Sessions, also, the media immediately jumps on him and says, he's a racist. He was subjected to a really bitter campaign when he was nominated back in the 80s, in which people were calling him a racist. And if you look at what, again...
Just because they call him doesn't mean it's true.
I know, but he actually lost his, what he was up for, but it was, I don't remember, a judgeship.
That's what kills me. People don't have facts, and if they have feelings, they make it into reality, and it's
like,
something that they need to learn.
In fact, I've seen one of the things that people accused him of is he said, the Ku Klux Klan is okay, but I didn't like them when I found out they smoked pot. It was so obviously that it was a joke. It was so obvious it was a joke, and people were accusing him of, look, he's pro Ku Klux Klan.
Oh my God!
It completely
Are you
insane.
serious?
Yeah. It's just completely crazy. Over here's an article from the right, but it's a little bit more accurate, in which says when he was in Alabama, he desegregated schools. He's clearly not he's not a racist as far as that's concerned, and he gave the death penalty to a KKK murderer. He's clearly not a pro Ku Klux Klan. It's crazy. So there's a lot of bias about that.
It's bias and disconnect. But something,
Absolutely.
it's for moving forward somebody else's agenda, and they never take into account what the reality is.
Yep.
Okay, let's go on. I want to hear about Mike Pompeo.
Well, Mike Pompeo, Mrs.
met
Elder
the
and
guy.
I, we
I
met him.
know.
We met Mike
He was
Pompeo
great.
a number of months ago at a private meeting with like 20 people, and we heard him talk, and then we asked questions. I was very impressed with the guy, and
So was I. I was going to say to you, he was extremely impressive. Being from Kansas, and he was explaining to us the kind of issues that he has to deal with.
yeah.
I was like, wow.
Yeah, and it was clear also, and again, as soon as he was announced, the first tweets I saw from him and the first headlines I saw were also, he's a racist, he's anti-Islam and
I know,
stuff
can
like
you
that.
believe that?
It was like, and he's not. He's telling us, he meets with the people from the mosque. The main thing
even
he
met
was
with him to ask what he could do to become more informed.
Yeah, exactly. Now, he was very upset because one mosque in Kansas was hosting a Hamas imam, and he said, listen, you have every right to do this. It's free speech. It's the country. You're allowed to do this. I think it's an extraordinarily bad idea, and he was public about why he felt it was a bad idea, because essentially it
And
looks
that was
like
great that he actually did that.
Exactly. And he definitely is against, Islamic extremism. He's a very big critic of the Iran nuclear deal because, but he knows about it. He knows his stuff.
I was quite impressed by him.
Yeah, he stumbled onto, the facts when he was actually doing his own research and talking to the IAEA, I believe when he was in Europe, in Paris or something. And he said, and he found out, he said, oh, what's the secret annex that somebody just mentioned to me? And then he started looking at it, and he's like, he could not believe what was going on with the deal. And he became one of the most strident critics of the Iran deal.
And rightfully so.
Well, exactly, but it's not like he started off that way. He found that he saw what was going on.
He did the research. I got to tell you, in all honesty, I was extremely impressed when we met him. I listened to him speak. Mm-hmm. It was quite intriguing, and I was actually kind of shocked. Coming from Kansas, literally,
yeah,
I could not believe how educated and how well-spoken he was, and he was willing to do something about it.
Are you a racist against people from Kansas that you think that they don't know how to speak?
No, but the fact is that you wouldn't think that he ran into as many issues in Kansas that you would find.
That's
in a
true.
place
No,
like
you're
New
right.
York,
You're right.
Chicago, California.
No, you're right. And the stuff came up, and he was, and
No,
he
but
was
he handled it well.
right. And and there was terror issues in Kansas. I mean, this is what
Right,
happens.
but I'm just saying too, who would have thought they were as significant
It's true.
as they were?
100%. No, we were both very impressed with him. He's a really, really good guy and very happy. And most people are luckily saying that that he is a good choice for CIA director. He does have the experience. He has some intelligence experience.
I'm just blown away. I got to meet the CIA director.
Yeah. Okay. So, at any rate, that's going to be the show for today. But those are our initial.
Before he takes off, I need to tell everybody, please donate. We need to make more shows. We like to make it daily. We'd like to make it multiple times a day. Please make yourself a part of what we're doing. If you want to advertise, if you want to actually talk on the show, let us know the subjects that you're interested. Get involved. Let's make it happen. Let's hear a voice. Let's be a part of our voice.
That was a commercial message from Mrs. Elder.
And Mrs. Elder says, thank you.
Thank you very much. But for now, I'm Elder.
Mrs. Elder.
And thanks again for listening.